This is another Australia optometry clinical trial in looking at specifically on the Caucasian Australian. They demonstrated everybody again got astrocytoma. This consistently suggests that the non-Asian children, like Caucasian children, when they receive red light therapy, they will demonstrate even better treatment benefit in comparison to Chinese children. But this is a Japanese study demonstrates substantial astrocytoma among highly mildly children. Children, yes, in the 12-month study, in a single-arm study. And surprisingly, this is 2023, study published in 2023. Even in 2023, there's a lot of parallel independent study published. All demonstrate very strong benefit when the children receive So this is in Professor Jason James' a major review article. They demonstrate that actually the repeated low-level red light therapy we see that the stronger treatment benefit, much stronger treatment benefit in comparison with other like therapy, for example, outdoor trial, very mild treatment benefit, but red light therapy we see got a very strong benefit. There's a lot. This is a list of the paper we try to summarize it. There's a more than 20 randomized control trial paper published. They all consistently suggest robust effect. So a lot of people discussing about the safety of the red light therapy because fundamentally it looks very scary in a way that using laser repeatedly on the retina is a way to treat eye diseases. But we have to looking at fundamental things. First of all, this is first in class, first of this kind things like using a laser on the retina as a way to treat myopia or eye disease. But it's very important to understand this is very low level laser. If you look at the 4 millimeter pupil, the laser energy is 0.29 milliwatts. This is extremely low energy on the red light, on the laser. In comparison with this standard treatment, like 400, couple hundred, or couple thousand milliwatts, it's very, very low. That's why we call it low level of red light. And also the device comes with a small computer like this. With the username password, you are able to turn on the light. So this design, product design, is able to maximize or ensure the safety when the device is used at home because you cannot easily turn on the light. But turn on and off all your protocol because you're going to use the username password to turn it on. So this is an back-end system. Every single device you're able to observe, you're able to see the energy level in every single device. So at the back-end system, you can monitor the real-time monitor the laser energy situation. And this is the red light. The device has received ISO 13485 and also a CE mark approval, meaning the device is allowed to sell in Europe and all the Europe countries. And also the device has been approved in the United Kingdom, Australia, New Zealand, Turkey, Malaysia, and many other countries. We also try to compare the side effect. This is a systemic review with other treatment, low dosage technologies. And surprisingly, the incidence of side effect in the red light therapy is extremely low. When you talk to the patient, what's the incidence of red light side effect on the red light therapy? It's 0.88%. So meaning when you treat 10,000 patients, you've got like 9 patients with some side effect. So this is a study interestingly demonstrated on the multifocal ERG. So this is the N wave suggesting photoreceptor function and P wave suggesting bipolar or transmission of the function on the retina. So there's no change on the photoreceptor on the multifocal ERG, and actually there's an improvement, getting actually better on the P1 wave, suggesting a better transmission of retina. So there's no compromise on the photoreceptor function. So there's also a study in UK, I think, specifically looking at the color function. What they suggest is that there's a temporary impact on the color function, because after you use a red light, within a couple of minutes there's a change, but then it will return to normal. If you return to baseline after 5 minutes, there's no, in another word, there's no other changes after the treatment. This is a very rare case published in JAMA JAMA Ophthalmology Letters in 2023. Reports a very rare side effect. We still observe ISOS disruption right here. So, but then interestingly, Japanese doctors, retina specialists, they share with us, actually this is commentary in the, also published in JAMA. You can see when the problem happened, so there's a corner getting fully dark. You cannot see any corner right here. But after you stop the treatment, after 3 months, everything becomes normal, and then you can see the corner again. So the Japanese retina specialist is a night injury expert. They say this may be, the patient may be a rare clinical status disease. With the light stimulation, there's a hypophysin deposition on the RPE layer. So on the top of this, we also learned that this kind of changes is very rare event rate. And also the patient is super responder. So we really much need to looking at the super responder. How do you know it's super responder? Because they got a very strong treatment benefit and also a very prolonged after even 5 minutes or longer. So fortunately, this problem is detectable by OCT, and then it's recoverable but when you stop the treatment. There's another study published. They report this kind of changes. They call it metabolism deposit. So we understand this is all this metabolism deposit, they come with no visual acuity compromise. So visual acuity remain normal. This is important. This would mean that this observation meaning that this is the byproduct of the light therapy. So, but then it's the byproduct. It's a temporary changes, but then it's also with normal visual acuity. There also a safety interesting study published recently by Lisa Austrian and her group. They're comparing the 4 types of red light therapy devices, specifically on the performing a laboratory testing on the ANSI testing, and then they concluded this the laser device, the device is actually exceed the ANSI safety limit in laboratory conditions. But then, so after publication of Lisa Austin, there's a full laser published a separate, or published or launched a separate like red light, a testimonial commentary. Dr. Carr is leading authority on international safe light safety standard. So he's actually one of the members on the ANSI standard. So he's also running FDA accredited light safety lab in Austria. So this Professor John Marshall is an inventor of the LASIK examination. He's an inventor of the examination, and he's a top expert on the physician. Actually, he's applied physics expert. He's not a physician. He's a PhD. He's a physics expert. So this is a video. This is a video I encourage you to watch in the YouTube. Where they demonstrated very important observation. He said this laboratory, this is a maximum permissible exposure, and this is the established retinal injury. What they say is that actually the In the ANSI, its defined maximum MPE exposure is far below the biology safety threshold, which means the ANSI uses a very stringent or conservative threshold to define the MPE limit. Another point is that what the car and also John Marshall point out. So in this ANSI assessment, they use 7 mm as a sensor to measure the exposure. But in real reality, in clinical reality, if your pupil size is less than 4.3 mm, so this like the dose already already extremely safe. In other words, this laboratory testing they use a 7 mm. They assume the pupil size is very big. But in a real reality, in a real situation, the pupil size under the light policy scenario is less than 4 mm or even 2.5, 3 mm. So when you consider the size of the pupil size, and also when you consider the use as intent, the risk of the retinal injury is negligible, meaning that it's very minimal. This is conclusion from Dr. John Marshall's talk, the video. So in conclusion, red light therapy is just very similar to cataract surgery. Then no treatment is 100% safe. So as a doctor, we've got to consider the benefit risk ratio. For example, in a very young high myopia children, you will receive a lot of benefit, and with a very small risk. So we've got a very maximum benefit risk ratio when you, for example, use it in the red light high myopia patients. Of course, we encourage our doctors to adopt risk minimization strategy. For example, follow the consensus guideline, and then also perform fundus examination or fundus photography before the treatment, and then also ideally if you can perform OCT initial function test, because this is important to observe and monitor the possible structural changes. We also encourage the parents to monitor the warning sign, for example, after image. If the after image is greater than 5 minutes, then you've got to pay attention to it. Maybe the children or the child is super responding to light illumination. With that, I would like to conclude my talk, and also thank you so much for your invitation.
Xin cảm ơn giáo sư Đinh Quang Hiệu. Sau đây thì đề nghị các anh chị, các bạn đồng nghiệp ai có câu hỏi cho giáo sư